Hi everyone, this is Kieran, aka No Code Life on Twitter. I just wanted to do a quick tutorial about custom states in Bubble because I know when I was first learning Bubble and I came across them, I thought, wow, this sounds complicated. I really don't want to learn this. Uh, it turns out it's actually not complicated at all and they're really useful, but they are quite daunting at first. I think perhaps because the name custom states makes them sound more technical than they really are. So I've made a quick page here in my design view, which just has a few different examples of where you would use custom states. So what a custom state is essentially is a way of storing information on a page as opposed to in the database. So if you have a website and it's collecting information that it's displaying on the page, a lot of times it'll be information that's coming from the database, which obviously takes time. So usually that data only loads when you load the page or when you refresh the page. Sometimes it loads while you're on the page. So you'll see things refresh as you're looking at it. But the majority of the time, it will just come when you refresh the page. There are times when people do things on your website on a page and you don't want to have to refresh the page. And you don't want to have to store information in the database either because it just doesn't make sense. It's just a temporary action. So I think a better name for custom states would be something like page variables or something like that. Essentially, majority of the uses are really for changing the way things are displayed on the page while you're using it. So I've got three examples here of real ways that I've used custom states. And once you see them, I think you'll find that actually they're not that complicated. And also they're quite necessary for a lot of use cases. So the first one I've got here is while something is loading. So as you know, in Bubble, you can program a button with a workflow. So when you press it, something happens. Now, sometimes those workflows can actually take quite a long time to run. And there is a little loading bar at the top of the screen which scrolls across, but it's quite hard to see that. So what you don't want in many cases is the person who's using your site clicking the button and then clicking it again because they think nothing's happened. So custom states are firstly a really good way to show the user that something's happening. So for example, you can show a loading wheel using a custom state. So I'll just show you an example here. So here I've got a button that says do something. Now the workflow for this button is very simple. I've just said add a pause of 5,000 milliseconds, which I think is 5 seconds, and then show the done tick. So if I go on to a preview of this page, you can see no tick there. I press that. The bar scrolls across or moves across, and then the tick shows, okay? While it was doing that, the user may not notice that bar and they may keep spamming that button, which would be really bad if it was something like a payment button or something that's sending information to your database. So this is where you can use custom states. Now, one thing about custom states, which I think makes them more confusing, is the fact that you can store a custom state, or you need to store a custom state on an element in the page. Okay, and you can store it on any element. So you could store it on just this tick, or you could store it on a hidden element. I think that makes it more confusing because you have to then decide where you're going to store it. But actually, there is no relation between what element you store it on and what it is. You can pick a completely random element to store the custom state on. So one thing to just note is that if you go to the effort of making custom states and you store them on something like a button and then you delete that button or you kind of cut it and paste it in somewhere else, then all the custom state that you've stored on there will be gone. So quite a simple way to do it is just to store it on the actual page element itself. So if you double click outside of the main page box and you get the page name or title will appear. So you can do this on any element. If you press the information button here, so again, completely kind of random place to put it, but that's where it is. On any element, you can click information, you'll get this little pop-up and it says custom states, add a new custom state. Okay, so this is what you want to do. So then it says create a new state. So for this one, I'm going to just call it loading. And this is the really cool thing, is that it's just like any of your data variables in your database. So you can give it any type, including kind of the names of the data types you have. So I've just got some example data types in here. But the one I want this time is yes or no, because this is either going to be loading or it's not loading. It's only got two options. And then you can also make it a list of things. I'm not sure if I'll come on to that later, but that's pretty useful. But for now, it's just yes or no. And then you can also set a default value if you want. So I'm going to say no, because when someone loads the page, it's not going to be, that button is not going to be loading. And then I'm going to close that down. You can leave the default value blank. So the only thing to remember now is that that custom element, that custom state is stored on something called states, which is actually the name of the page. So that's what you need to remember, because you're going to refer to that in the workflow. So I've made that custom state, and it's just essentially an empty place to store the data, whether this is loading or not. At the moment, it's not doing anything. So to make it actually do something, I just go into the workflow and I say click to add action, and I go to element actions, set state. And this is where I need to remember what I called it. So luckily it's the top one, but otherwise you might have to search for it. I know that the page states is the element that I stored this, made this custom state on. So you can see why it gets a bit confusing. So I choose the custom state. There's only one there. And then I say, give it a value. So this is the case where I want it to say the value is yes, it is loading. And I'm going to move that to the start. Oops, is that working? Move that to the start of the workflow. So that means when I press the button, do something, the first thing it does is it's going to set this custom state to yes. And then it's going to do the next thing, which would normally be a load of different stuff. But now I'm just saying add a pause. And then I'm going to copy and paste that step, and instead of saying value yes, I'm going to say no. Okay, so that means it's going to set the state of loading to yes as the first step, go through the things in the list, and then when it gets to the end of the workflow, it's going to set it back to no. Right, so that's great. The only thing is, at the moment, it's not going to do anything because we haven't put any kind of visual element that shows what it says in that state. So it will do the change to the state, but it will just be completely hidden, so no one will know anything. So this is really the whole point of states, is that you can now refer to them somewhere else. So on this button, do something, what I'm going to say is I'm going to add a conditional, and I'm going to say when. So this is where I have to remember what it's called, states. Okay, loading, states is loading. So this is the custom state, is yes. Then I want it to change the text on the button to please wait. And I also want it to say, make sure the element isn't clickable. Okay. So now if I go to this page and just refresh. So when I press do something, it says, please wait. I can't click it. And then the arrow, the tick appears, and it goes back to its previous state. So that's one really good use of custom states, and I use it quite a lot. If there's any workflow that takes a while, or if there's any point where you just don't want people to press the button multiple times. The second example I have is when people are selecting items. So the example I have here, and I'm going to show you a real life example now from my VidPop site. So here I've got 3 different subscription plans that people can choose from. And I wanted it to be that when you click a button to select it, it doesn't just immediately run a workflow that selects that plan and then takes you through to the payment. I wanted it to give you the option, the ability to put in a discount code and also confirm that you've selected that. So what I've got it here is that if you click on one of them, it changes the button to say selected. And it also does this scroll down thing, which seems pointless here, but if it's on mobile, it actually makes a lot of sense. And if you look at the button down here where it says confirm business plan, when you press a new one, it says confirm freelance plan. So it changes to whichever plan you selected. So that I did with custom states, and I'll just show you how to do it here. So I've got 3 made up plans: plan 1, plan 2, and plan 3. So I'm going to again put this custom state just on the main page here, states, and I'm going to press the I again, and I add a new custom state, and I'm going to call it selected plan. Okay, and in this case, I'm just going to have it as, you could either have it as text or you could have it as number. If your plan's a number 1, 2, 3, I'll just have it as text, and then create that. So I'm not going to have a default value here because when they load the page, they won't have selected any plan. Okay, so what I want is, I want when you click on this button here, I want to make a workflow, and I want that to be element action set state. So I know that my 2 custom states now are stored on this element states, and this one's called selected plan, and I'm just going to say plan 1. So as it's just a plain text field, you just have to remember what you've typed in here. Okay, so I also want, oops, what's that there? On this one, plan 2, when someone clicks that button, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Set state, states, selected plan, plan 2. And same for this one. Plan 3. Okay, so it's as simple as that. And then I can now do whatever I want with these. So what I can say is conditional on this whole outer group box here, and just say when states. So this is a bit slowing up my computer a bit, the recording the screen. When states selected plan is plan 1, then I'll do background color, and I'll just make it a bit darker gray. Make it a bit more obvious like that. And I could do the same on the button as well. So I could say, so actually what I can do here is I'll just copy this, copy condition, and actually no, I think I can just paste it straight in. When state selected plan is plan 1. So I'm doing this on the button now, but I just want to change the text. Selected. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm copy this condition, paste it here. So actually, if you've got on the VidPop site, I actually have my plans all stored in the database, and then the grid that shows them is actually a repeating group that's just pulling the plans and the details from the database. So in that case, you can still use custom states, and it would actually is quicker than what I'm doing here because it's a repeating group. You just apply it to one, and then you say if the selected plan is the plan in this box, current sales plan, sorry, then act accordingly. Copy condition. So I'm just copying the condition from the first one over to the second and third. And each time I'm just changing the variable. Okay, so that should do it. Okay, there you go. So every time I click this button, it's running a little workflow that says the selected plan is now plan 1, selected plan is now plan 2, and so on. And that's changing. Then I'm just using that information wherever I want, and I can change anything about the boxes, and I could change the text on this button or anywhere on the page just based on that. Right, and the third way that I've used custom states is here. So you can do tabs with it, which are obviously super useful if you want any kind of social network site. So this is Motormate. You can view your members and then just click timeline and chat, and it looks like you've got 3 different pages, but really it's just one page with 3 custom states. So that's obviously very useful. So here I've got, if I show you here, so I've got two tabs. I've got tab 1, and then hidden below that, why can't I see it here? I don't know why I can't see it there. Oh. Right, yeah. So here I've got two tabs here. Actually, that group tab 1 should not be inside group tab 2. But it should probably work anyway. So I've got tab 1 content inside group tab 1, and then tab 2 content inside a group with a different color. So all I want to do now is have in states again. So double click out here. I'm just going to create a new custom state. Selected tab. And this can be text again. And then I can have default value. Let's say I want it to be tab 1 whenever people load the page. Okay, so now, so on tab 1, so what I want to do is make it so it's not visible on page load, and on tab 2, also going to make it so it's not visible on page load, and then I want to show them conditionally. So on tab 2, I'm going to say when states selected tab is tab 2, this element is visible. And then on tab 1, I'm going to say, I should have just copied and pasted that. States. Selected tab is tab 1. This element is visible. Okay, and then I just need to attach that to these buttons. So I need to make a workflow for each button so that it just changes the state. So when someone presses tab 1, element actions, set state. So no states, selected tab 1. And if I just copy that. So I'm going to paste the same thing in here. Change that to tab 2. Okay, so reload the page, fingers crossed. Okay, so it should have defaulted to tab 1, but what I can do is, so when the page is loaded, element actions, set state, states, selected tab 1. Okay, so when the page is loaded, it's going to set that state immediately to tab 1. So if I now refresh this, okay, interesting. Tab 2 is working, tab 1 is not. Okay, this might be because I've got tab 1 inside tab 2. So this is one thing about Bubble, is when something's nested inside something else, it's a bit tricky to get it out. But if you cut and paste, it usually works. So I just want to overlay this, but not put it inside it. Has that worked? The thing about Bubble is when you drag something over the top of something else. I'm just going to put it slightly offset like that so I don't accidentally drag it inside. Just update this and let's see if it works. Okay, there's tab 1, tab 2. There we go. So it's working. So the reason it didn't work is because I had my tab 1 was nested inside tab 2 and the tab 2 group. And the tab 2 group I had don't show on page load, and I had the custom state set to automatically be tab 1. But now that they're not nested inside each other, which you shouldn't do anyway, it's fine and it's working well. So there you go. That's custom states explained. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me on Twitter, and I'll happily do my best to answer them. But thanks for watching.